Alabama just wood chippered LSU, 42-13. I give it one chalice on the 1 to 5 scale. I mean, this was not exactly an instant classic that you'll show your kids generations from now. But if you were an Alabama fan, man, that's 5 stars across the board. I go into this game thinking, this is a toss-up. This is a toss-up. Maybe I even slightly lean LSU because both run games have been enigmatic. And last time I saw Bama on the road, it was Tennessee, and they were shaken and they were rattled, and there was no consistency. So I go in thinking it's going to be a coin flip game. I walk out thinking, am I going to be deposed after what I just witnessed? Like, could this go to trial? Just assault. All caps, assault. I was in my hotel by midnight last night. Do you understand how impossible that's supposed to be? For a night kickoff in Tiger Stadium, even if I'm staying in Baton Rouge, if you're covering this game, you figure 4-hour game, right? And so 6:30 kickoff, you figure 10:30 is the earliest it wraps up. And then there's lightning forecast to be in the area, so you think there could be a delay. And then you think it's going to be a close game, so no one's leaving early. And then afterwards, you got to stick around an hour and a half minimum. And so I go to press conferences. I'll let the traffic die down. Forget all that. This place was a ghost town midway through the fourth quarter. We just strolled out, and I don't even think I hardly hit my brakes going to the hotel. I was there. I was in my hotel to watch the fourth quarter of the Brigham Young-Utah game last night, which is just unfathomable. So in 2022, many of you who live in Louisiana know Garth Brooks sold Tiger Stadium out. Just an unbelievable spectacle. But unfortunately, last night, it was not Garth Brooks who chose to perform in Death Valley. Last night, the Sarah McLachlan special descended on Tiger Stadium. Alabama outrushes LSU 311-104. Milroe had 15.4 yards per carry at the quarterback position, 340 rush yards and 8 touchdowns in his last 2 games against LSU. That's good for ownership papers. That's what Diego Pavia did to the state of Alabama. Milroe's done it to LSU. LSU minus 3 turnovers. It's still a chronic issue. Bama had 21 points off those turnovers, and now the SEC championship hopes kind of evaporate for LSU. The college football playoff hopes kind of evaporate, and the most jarring image that I don't know that I've ever seen to this extreme degree, Tiger Stadium just empty. Midway through the fourth quarter, I mean, you can hear people yelling on the other side of the stadium, which normally happens long after the game's over, but in this case, there's time on the clock, and it's just, hey, Jeff. Hey, Josh. He's across the building. He's across the way. Man, what an identity game for Alabama. That's the only word. I think DeBoer after the game said, we chose words to focus on this week. Relentless, I think, was one of their words. It was an identity game for them. This is everything Alabama's supposed to be. Everything that if you've watched them struggle at various times this year, you yelled at the TV for them to lean into, they leaned into. They got to the stadium yesterday. I talked to a couple of the coaches, talked to a couple of the support staffers as they came in, and to their credit, they said, I think we used this bye week very well. I think we were honest with ourselves. We admitted what we are. We admitted what we aren't. And for better or for worse tonight, we're going to lean into what we think we are. 48 runs, 18 passes. And that's not to say they can't throw the ball. But what was going to put them in the best position to win this game, all due respect to Ryan Williams and those wideouts, was not the passing game. Because what we saw A&M do to LSU, as it turns out, Alabama was even more equipped to do to LSU. Remember that third down key we talked about? We've actually focused on this a lot of the season with Alabama. Third and short, they're really good. They're top 10 in converting that. Third and long, they are in like the 130s nationally. Last night, they went 10 of 13 on third down. 7 of those 10 were 3rd and 5 or less. They stayed ahead of the chains. The longest one they tried to convert was 3rd and 9. They were never way backed up, which is funny because the very first play of the game was a false start. But after that, wasn't a huge issue. Penalties weren't a chronic issue. Consistently being behind the chains was not a huge issue. And it's wild what happens when you got the weapon they've got at quarterback and you stay ahead of the chains where running the ball is consistently an option and it's actually something you lean on. It's wild how different that looks. And then you also consider in this complementary game of ours, defense is quietly rounded into form with them. LSU doesn't crack double digits until way late in this game last night. And it's not one of those like impenetrable units that Nick Saban used to trot out there in the early 2010s. I wouldn't call it bend but don't break, but they play a different style. But the grand scheme of things, like the grand design of this, is keep the team from scoring on you. And more so, they're keeping teams from scoring on them. Now, they were dealt a very heavy blow in this game. Matt Zenitz reporting just a couple of hours ago, actually, that Q Robinson is out for the season with an upper extremity injury, and that's tough. That's one of their best players on defense. But so was Keon Sabb. And you saw him go down with a broken foot earlier in the year, and then you look at number 18 back there, and he steps up and was one of their most important players last night. Bray Hubbard is a guy who you weren't looking at necessarily on the Alabama depth chart early in the year as saying, that's a guy that's going to be a difference maker. But he is. So now someone else has to step up and be a difference maker. For LSU, this was as demoralizing as it gets in many, many different ways. I got to tell you now, I wish you guys could be there. I want you to go back and watch the TV copy. If you were there, you know what I mean. If you could be there, if you could stand on the field early in the game, Bama's first drive, Tiger Stadium at full throat, as loud as any place you could ever be for a sporting event or otherwise. It sounds like you're on a runway. It sounds like there are jet engines all around you. And the fireworks that have gone off in the pregame, the smoke is just hovering about 30 yards above the field, which makes it look like there's a ceiling on the top of the playing surface, and it's raining fairly steadily. It is, without question, the nastiest, most intimidating environment that you could ever be in. You look at Alabama, and you're just on the sideline. I'm standing there thinking, I can't imagine being a road team playing in this. I can't even believe we can create this kind of environment. This looks like a production. It looks like there are actors. It looks like it's AI, but it's not. It's real life. And then you just completely deflate it because that's what running the ball consistently does. So Tiger Stadium was effective for a drive or two, and then largely it didn't get silenced immediately, but it got neutralized because, again, that's what running the football can do. That's what playing defense can do on the road. And then at the same time, you know what the backdrop here is. The backdrop is you had a bunch of problems against A&M. They cropped up again. And Jesse, I think we have this clip afterwards. Brian Kelly kind of summed it up nicely. And Brian Kelly's very good at understanding what the criticisms will be following a game and just getting out in front of the criticisms and making sure he says them before the fans can yell them. Let's roll it.
What did these guys do for 2 weeks? We have a scheme to stop the quarterback. We did not get that done. So I take responsibility for it. Blake is not going to hide from the responsibility, but we also have to put our players in the right position to take advantage of what they're capable of doing. So we own it together, and we've got to get it fixed, certainly, because it's been a couple of weeks now, in 2 games. So I respect the inquiries and the questions, because we now go into these last 3 games with the need to win all 3 of these games and play better football in the month of November.
It's not a one-size-fits-all thing. When you struggle on a side of the ball, like they have defensively, I really think there are 2 different, or maybe 3 different things in play here. So when you go back to the A&M game, and Marcel Reed tore them up in the second half when he came in, it was really popular for everyone to say, oh, man, they weren't prepared for that. I don't think, the more I went back and watched the game, I don't think it was they weren't prepared for it. I think maybe what you were looking at is Blake Baker as a defensive coordinator and that defensive staff sort of calling a game too aggressively, basically trying to win the game defensively when you probably don't have the personnel to try and win a game defensively. Now you watch last night, and it may very well be they didn't put guys in the best position. It could be a blend of that plus they didn't execute. Or it still could be they're wringing every last drop they can out of this defense, but personnel can only come so far over one cycle. That's not always excuse making when you say that. Sometimes that's just reality. Like, I still think LSU defensively, I'd take this product 10 times out of 10 over what I saw last year. Same thing with USC. There's only so much you can do over 1 year to the next year. But LSU still got a lot to play for, and what they have is they have Bryce Underwood committed right now. That's the entire backdrop. I was down there Friday. They knew they had a big recruiting weekend, but everything about LSU right now and any criticism of Brian Kelly right now, everybody knows in the back of their mind, we got Bryce Underwood coming in this upcoming class. Some of you follow recruiting, some of you don't. Underwood, there is no sure thing, but he's very close to it. Monster, just a monster, man amongst boys in high school. And so everyone knows that's the program. That is the future of this program, and there is a lot of talk in the recruiting world right now about Michigan getting involved there. I think he's from Michigan, plays his high school ball in Michigan. So that's the backdrop. That is the future of the program. This year is what it is. I thought LSU was a very big wild card team. Part of being a wild card team is you got just as much chance to flop as you do to shine. They flopped last night. Not a terrible season here if they finish strong. 9 wins is not bad at all. But Alabama's in position now to be one of a few teams that can win it all, that have the upside to win it all. I've seen, I think, all of these teams in person now. The only one I hadn't been able to watch in person is Ole Miss. I'm sold on Ole Miss anyway. I've seen Oregon. Oregon looks like the best team in the country to me. Texas has the upward mobility to go on a title run. Alabama has the upward mobility to go on a title run. They've got just as much a chance of being beaten by Auburn in a couple of weeks if they don't show up. So there is a ton in play here. But when these teams are at their best, Oregon's the best I've seen. Alabama is in that conversation. When teams are at their best is what I'm talking about here. Not what the team's been in totality. Because what Alabama's been in totality still is probably a notch below that of an Oregon. Because Oregon's been far more consistent and lethal this year. And I'm trying to phrase this properly so we're not getting ahead of ourselves. These are not predictions or anything like that. But we have got a glob of potential 2-loss teams just in the SEC alone. Someone's going to make a run here. So it's the one that peaks at the right time, obviously, that's going to make the run. I do want to thank everyone down at LSU because we hadn't been down there for a game since 2019. Amazing trip back. Weather, no weather, amazing trip back. The entire staff down there, strength and conditioning staff, Jake and his guys, the folks over at LSU Plus went over to the stadium and met with them Friday. I even sat down with Jay Johnson, who's the head baseball coach down there, because that may be the best baseball program in the country, and that is my native sport. And so I had a good talk with him and obviously the entire staff there. Michael Bonnet, his entire staff there, and coaching staff as well. Really treated us great and look for every reason to get down to LSU. Guys, if you've never done that, I strongly encourage you to do it. Now, if you're a road team, hopefully your team performs like Bama did going in there, but it is a sight to behold. To be in that place Saturday night, it's just a sight to behold.